Trigger, good news. I figured out how Ash has been hacking into your video feed. We won't be able to keep him out or figure out where he's hacking us from, but we will be able to counter-hack him. You can call him whenever you like. Nice. Bring him up now. I want to see the shock and surprise in the eyes of that obnoxious little weasel.
You never see it coming. You see that my mind is too fast for eyes.
What the hell?
This isn't what it looks like!
It looks like you're lip-singing to Persona 5's Last Surprise.
Okay, so it's exactly what it looks like.
Is this really all you do? Lip-sing to video game songs and breathe down my neck to make sure I'm not criticizing Starlight?
Hey, just because I bother you doesn't mean I'm not keeping an eye on other people! I just haven't figured out how to hack their systems yet.
You figured out how to hack Onyx and Wooden Sword just fine.
Do not mention the name of the Dark Lord!
Who? Onyx?
No, the other one!
You know what? This isn't going the way I wanted, so I'll just leave you alone. I've got a video to do anyway.
Yes. You do that!
Oh yeah, I'm
Trigger happy, yes I'm trigger happy. Better watch out, punk, or I'm gonna have to blow you away.
You want to know what I really enjoyed? That top 10 I did with Mr. Left Turn. In fact, it was so much fun that I'm gonna do another one on my own. And I know exactly what topic I want to do next. Top 10 fruit salad episodes. Now, if you're new to this channel, you're probably thinking one of two things. Why is this Joker using the pony creator? And what the hell is a fruit salad episode? Well, the answer to your first question is that I can't draw for shit and I can't afford a vector artist. The answer to your second question requires a bit more explanation. I find that most people tend to have rather black and white opinions on whatever fruits they like. I, for example, really like peaches, strawberries, watermelon, grapes, and pineapple, but I can't stand blackberries, raspberries, or blueberries. And considering how common all of these fruits are in fruit salads, you're bound to get some stuff you like and some stuff you don't like. This is what a fruit salad episode is. A thoroughly enjoyable episode with one or two elements that aren't necessarily enough to ruin the whole thing for you, but still stand out like a blot of ink on an otherwise blank piece of paper. Now, the thing about a phrase like this is that it is very subjective. There will always be elements in a story that irritate me, but you might not mind, and vice versa. Chances are you'll see plenty of episodes that are generally considered to be quite good, and also a few that probably aren't going to be on anyone's favorite list. Keep in mind that I'm not ranking these episodes in order of which ones are best. I am ranking them in order of which ones I think outline this idea the best. Expect to see a wide variety in episode quality as we go along.
fruit salad, yummy yummy. Fruit salad, yummy yummy.
Yeah, you know it's a good sign when Newbie Dash makes the list. Though in truth the episode only barely makes the cut. I still maintain that this is one of the most overhated episodes of the show. It's not especially great, Rainbow Dash is annoying as hell in the second act, and I think the episode would have greatly benefited from more time spent with the Wonderbolts treating Rainbow Dash like she's part of the team, other than that one scene of Fleetfoot showing her some empathy. I also understand how this episode can trigger some traumatic memories for fans, so I can't really fault people for hating this episode. But I still believe that this episode is actually pretty darn good underneath all of that. The idea that your dream might not quite be what you'd imagined is a good one, and I think the episode does a good job of making the distinction between Rainbow Crash as a derogatory term and a term of endearment. There is a huge connotational difference between the two uses of the nickname. I will acknowledge that a child could potentially misinterpret the message to be that you should just accept it if you're being bullied, but I maintain that that is highly unlikely given how much emphasis is put on the nickname being a term of endearment during the episode's ending. Not a great episode, but not as deserving of the ridicule it gets as many people think.
Fruit salad, yummy yummy. Fruit salad, yummy yummy.
Why don't more people talk about this episode? Where the Apple Lies is one of the most underrated episodes of Season 6. Nobody dislikes it, as far as I know, but it should have gotten way more praise than it did. I mean, I'm not surprised that it didn't, but stop flip-flopping and talk about the episode. Fine. Retroactively giving Applejack a reason for why she's so honest all the time is a genius decision, both in its simplicity and its prospects. It allows the writers to explore a character in a way that you just can't do with other means of storytelling. Imagine the writers trying to work this premise with the, for lack of a better word, modern Applejack. But what I really love about this episode is its execution. It perfectly captures the mindset of a child who lies to get out of trouble. I won't say what really happened, but I'll fix it so that I won't get in trouble later. I wasn't the most honest person growing up, and I can say from personal experience that the thought process and desperation is perfectly represented here, if a bit over-exaggerated. But therein lies the episode's weakness. Don't get me wrong, the story is engaging, but the humor that rises from Applejack's shenanigans is really lacking. So much so that I'm not all that surprised that nobody remembers this episode. It does an amazing job conveying its message, but it's kinda dull to watch on repeat viewings. Okay, so I wrote this part of the script before I actually went looking for people's thoughts on this episode, and it turns out that people's biggest issue with it is the continuity hiccup with Apple Bloom apparently not being born yet when the events of this episode went down, yet the Apple family's parents aren't around. Which is fair, I mean, I just assumed they were on a business trip or something, but still, it's fair. I just wanted to acknowledge that issue so that I didn't get 1,000,001 comments telling me about it. Alright, on with the list.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
I know I'm not the only one who thought the acts had a rocky entry to this show. It's actually kind of amazing just how one-note they are. You do anything slightly wrong, and they'll go on a rampage. Just like... They're pretty much the only thing holding Party Poop back from being a great episode. But it's still a pretty good one. Yeah, Pinky's trip doesn't make much sense, but Pinky herself has never made much sense, and the trip is easily the best part of the episode. In fact, Pinky herself is absolutely amazing in this episode. She's got one job, and she does everything she can to complete it. Although her having files on everyone in Ponyville is actually kind of creepy when you think about it for too long. Makes you wonder if Pinky's a member of the Equestrian Secret Service. Speaking of the acts, I really like this message. It's really unique and very well worded.
We shouldn't try to make Equestria feel like your home. We should try to make you feel at home in Equestria.
Huh. I don't have anything else to say. That was a surprisingly short segment.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
I like Shadow Play, but it has two really big distractions in it that I can never get around whenever I decide to give it a watch. And funnily enough, both problems are limited to each half of the finale. My issue with the first half is that it lacks any real focus. It's not one story, it's several stories rolled up into one, and the episode's pacing has to be supercharged in order to fit them all into a 22-minute runtime. Watching the first half of Shadow Play feels less like watching a narrative unfold, and more like going through a checklist of things that need to happen before the real story begins. The main six collecting all the artifacts could easily have been a season-wide arc, but instead they're all crammed into the first half of the finale. Paradoxically though, as distracting as it is, it still manages to be really engaging. While all the stories are introduced and resolved, often within a minute of being started, they convey the sense that all these stories combined are building up to something big. So as distracting as it is, it doesn't really hinder the episode that much. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for my problem with the second half. Stygian's reformation is completely superfluous! A big part of Shadowplay's second half is spent learning the history between the Pillars and Stygian. This is an essential part of the story and I wouldn't really change a thing about it. It's a really good way to build up the twist that Stygian was never trying to usurp the Pillars, he just wanted them to treat him as an equal. It's a good twist, if incredibly predictable, but what purpose does reforming him serve? Failing to save him from the shadow would have sent the exact same message. If anything, it would have made it even more impactful. And I know plenty of people argue that failing to save him would be too dark and too contrary to the show's tone, but the show's handled dark subject matter like this before, and it always comes out on a happy note. There's no reason why this episode couldn't do the same. The episode could easily have ended with the Pillars setting out on their own adventure to find Stygian and try to bring him back. The episode still ends on an optimistic note, and it gives a purpose for the Pillars returning besides them just being there in later episodes. Although that would mean we'd miss out on this bizarrely hilarious joke in Rockhoof in a Hard Place.
Hey, look what I found! Me and My Shadow, the third hit novel by former villain Stygian. I'm impressed. He's really thriving.
I don't know what it is, there's just something I find funny about that. Again, it's a really fun episode to watch, it's just really distracting sometimes.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
Flutter is one of the best episodes of Season 6, if not the entire show. Practically everything about this episode, with the exception of the musical number, is pretty much perfect. And it's also kind of irritating. I could spend hours gushing about how well written Fluttershy is in this episode, her irritation with her parents' lack of backbone, her willingness to take Zephyr in, but on the condition that he get a job, the way she steadfastly refuses to give Zephyr an inch when he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, and her compassion as she recognizes when he's reached his lowest moment. That entire scene reminds me of a talk I had with my sister one time, and it wasn't Fluttershy I was empathizing with. But Zephyr's kind of my problem with this episode. He's a little too well written. I know that sounds like an incredibly stupid complaint to have, but as much as he captures the mental state of an individual who's afraid to try for fear of failure, he comes off as a little grating way more often than I'd like. Stop hitting on Rainbow, you creeper! The last thing this fandom needs is more ships! We should invest in some siege or some ranged units or something. Again, it doesn't derail the episode, it's just a little irritating.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
The difference between a fruit salad episode and a guilty pleasure is that a guilty pleasure is all about enjoying something you know is, or considered to be bad, while a fruit salad episode is about enjoying something in spite of some irritating elements. Flutter Brutter is a damn good episode, one of the best in Season 6. I simply find it a little irritating to watch because they succeeded just a little too much in making Zephyr annoying. Feeling Pinky Keen, on the other hand, is definitely a bad episode with one of the most poorly worded morals in the show. I consider both to be fruit salad episodes because while they vary greatly in terms of quality, they're both thoroughly enjoyable to watch. Speaking as a religious person, I think that simply choosing to believe in something is a pretty stupid thing to teach kids. Not just in religious matters, but pretty much any aspect of life. You're basically setting them up to be gullible and teaching them not to think critically. And if I had to choose between everyone believing in my religion and everyone being capable of reasonable thought, I'd go with the latter any day of the week. That said, this is one of the funniest episodes in the show. Cue montage! Not much else to say. Poorly worded message, hilarious episode. Moving on.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
Now! Come on, Trigger, you gotta do it. I don't wanna! You wrote the script, you recorded the lines, you've got to do it. Okay. You know what? I'll compromise with you. I'll talk about the episode, but I won't address the controversy unless someone brings it up. Okay? Okay. Brotherhooves Social. Not gonna lie, the first time I watched this episode, I hated it. The man dressing up as a woman trope has never been very funny to me, and my initial reaction to its incorporation in this story was what it usually is: disgust. But I've revisited the episode several times, and while it's still uncomfortable to sit through, it is kind of hilarious watching everyone react to Orchard Blossom, especially Sweetie Bloom.
That's Big Mac in a dress.
I still hate the man dressing up as a woman trope, but you gotta give Big Mac massive props for going through with it. There are a few men who would cross-dress just to help their little sister get something she wants. I know I wouldn't be caught dead cross-dressing. Stop imagining that! And that final scene with Apple Bloom and Big Mac is absolutely heartwarming. Even my first time watching this, I absolutely loved that scene. It's an excellent episode. It's just not one that I'm eager to rewatch anytime soon.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
Okay, show of hands. Who's surprised? Yeah, Fame and Misfortune's inclusion on this list was inevitable. This episode has always been a hot topic, and not without reason. The way this episode represents the fanbase is somewhat questionable, and some of the writing is really confusing. However, I still don't think it's that bad. Sure, the focus is on the more toxic side of the fanbase, but it's not pure negativity. Some of them are just a little too enthusiastic. It's the biggest reason why I don't agree with the consensus that this episode was only written because DHX wanted to respond to criticism. If that really was the sole purpose, there would be nothing but negativity on the part of the ponies. And Starlight is f***ing amazing in this episode. Every second she's on screen, she's helping someone, be it defending her friend's honor or just generally helping through this crazy ordeal. Some will argue that Stranger Than Fanfiction is a better episode for representing the fanbase better, and I'd agree that it's a better episode, but not because of how that episode handles the fanbase. It's a better episode because it put more emphasis on the story than it did representing elements of a fanbase, critical or otherwise. And I'm assuming that the writer actually wanted to write that episode. Sorry, Larson.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
If you're one of the 30-odd subscribers I had when I first started out, it'll come as no surprise to you that All Bottled Up makes the list. This was the first episode that I ever attributed to eating a fruit salad. Its greatest strengths are in stark contrast to its greatest weaknesses. A feature that's mostly thanks to how sloppy the episode's B-plot is integrated into the narrative. You thought the Canto Bite subplot was pointless? There is no reason for the main six's escape room subplot to be in this episode. It has absolutely no connection to the A-plot whatsoever. I know other shows utilize an A-plot, B-plot story structure to great effect, but many of those shows have the advantage of being written with an A-plot, B-plot story structure in mind. It also doesn't help that Trixie is villainized way too much in this episode. I get that that's kind of the whole point to the episode and its message, but was it really necessary to have her be this unlikable? I acknowledge that this is totally in character for her, but there's a difference between being oblivious to your friend's feelings and actively causing multiple problems for your friend and being completely unaware of the consequences that they will have to suffer because of you. But that brings us back to the moral, which really is the saving grace for this episode. Bottling up your emotions is unhealthy. You have to let your anger out or your friends will never know that there is a problem, and you will eventually lose your temper. I really like this message, though if I had to nitpick, I'd say that the episode forgets to mention that there's a healthy and non-healthy way to let your anger out. Thank you, Sounds of Silence, for being the awesomely awesome piece of awesomeness that you are.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like happiness Trigger?
is the
What are you doing? Getting things ready for my crucifixion. What? Do you think they want to use nails or screws? Why the hell do you think people will want to crucify you? Oh, trust me, when they see my pick for my #1 fruit salad episode, they'll be crawling at the bit to put me up on a cross. Do you think I should ask to be put upside down or right side up? I mean, not everyone who was crucified during Roman times was a messiah, so it's not really narcissistic to request being put right side up. Trigger, you specifically said you weren't putting these episodes in order of which ones you think were best. It's not like you think it's a good episode. Feeling Pinky Keen was on this list for Celestia's sake. What is your #1 fruit salad episode, anyway? Putting your hoof down. Ask for nails, not screws, and give them a nail gun to do it. That'll make the pain quick, if not easy. Make sure to ask to be put right side up, that way you won't have to deal with the blood rushing to your head. Ooh, good call. I didn't even think about the nail gun. Yeah, go ahead. Rage in the comments, call me a psychopath or a Nazi or whatever your preferred synonym for a terrible person. Just give me a chance to explain myself. Before or after you go on your warpath, I don't really care. Putting your hoof down is a very personal episode for me. I empathize with Fluttershy in this episode big time. I'm very often put in situations where I'd like to do or say something pretty nasty, and then I come back down to earth and realize that I'm now thinking rationally, and the people that I was thinking about don't deserve to have such horrible things happen to them. It's probably why I'm okay with the characterization in this episode. Fluttershy's inhibitions about criticizing other people gradually get removed to the point where she actually starts hurting her friends. And yeah, I can totally buy that taking a moment to look at herself, both figuratively and literally, would bring her back down to earth again. I've been thinking about doing a What Do I Know on this episode for a while now, but in short, I think the pacing and characterization in this episode is absolutely brilliant. Well, okay, Pinky and Rarity's questionable morals in the first act are a real problem, but other than that, I think this episode is freaking great. I even considered making a case for it to be on that top 10 overhated episodes list I did with Mr. Left Turn. But even if Lifty hadn't talked me out of it, it still probably wouldn't have made the list. And the reason why can be boiled down to just one line. See, in the past I've defended episodes like Every Little Thing She Does and Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep because the reckless behavior of Starlight and Luna respectively was not portrayed as something to be emulated. You're not supposed to think Starlight's brainwashing is okay, and you're not supposed to think Luna creating the Tantibus is okay. This episode doesn't portray Fluttershy's lack of inhibitions as a good thing either, but it does do something that is arguably worse. It tries to shift the blame.
You just received some bad advice from that Iron Will character.
Yeah, he's the one that made you act super duper nasty.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
I mean, wow! That is easily the worst line in the entire show. This episode is trying to say that Fluttershy cannot be held responsible for her terrible behavior. It's not implying it, it's outright saying it! Yes, the advice that she got from Iron Will was poorly worded and misinterpreted to a dangerous degree. But the fact of the matter is, Fluttershy still did it. Iron Will didn't make Fluttershy kick a cart full of garbage onto a couple of ponies. He didn't make Fluttershy beat the crap out of a pony for stealing her cab, and he definitely didn't make her swing a pony around, by the camera strap, and throw him several yards. She chose to do all of that. This episode is trying to have its cake and eat it too by delivering a message about the difference between being assertive and being a bully, while absolving Fluttershy of the responsibility for her bad behavior. And you cannot do that, especially not with this kind of message. You can attribute your bad behavior to bad advice you received, which is what Rarity's doing, but you cannot shift the blame to the person who gave you that advice, Pinky. It's still your behavior. You have to take responsibility for your actions. You have to own your behavior.
You are all the things that are wrong with you. It's not the alcohol or the drugs or any of the shitty things that happened to you in your career or when you were a kid. It's you. All right? It's you.
Other than that, I think this episode is great. I'm Officer Trigger Happy, and I'm ready for my crucifixion.
We're done here.